Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly title. I'm the staff writer and this week's host, Jesse Billington, and I'm joined by editor David Simister and content editor James Peam. Gentlemen, how are we and how are the classics?
Yeah, having a good week. The Mazda is up and running again, although while I've been out enjoying the sunshine in it, it does mean I've got a list of things to do on it now. So the main one being that the central locking appears to have packed up, so I'm now having to lock and unlock it with the keys manually. So that's lots of fiddly electric work to be cracking on with at some point.
Possibly just a crusty connection somewhere that might have triggered that one.
Possibly.
And James, you're now just chatting. You've got some work lined up this weekend, really, for your fleet, haven't you?
Yeah, I was cracking on last weekend with the Beetle, but then I broke a bleeder on my new brakes, which is not ideal. So that's kind of ruined play on that one. And then I thought I'm going to switch over to doing some body work on the van, but it's scheduled to rain in Somerset, so that might put the kibosh on that one.
Yeah, it's looking like either a glorious weekend in some parts of the country and absolutely rubbish in others. I think Goodwood just about gets away with it. I think we've got a few evening showers or something moving through, but otherwise it's set to be some rather nice days. But yeah, not great if you want to be outside with body filler and a bit of touch-up paint. Anyway, that out of the way, we'll kick off this week's podcast with the big lead news story, and it is a big one. In fact, you could say it is global, and this is the fact that classics are avoiding the swathe of tariffs laid out by President Trump in America. Classics won't be hit with import tariffs for Americans, but there's still doubt over whether parts will be hit with additional duties. And this is a big story. Obviously, it's got wider implications beyond just classic cars, but when it comes to our part of the world, this is a bit of a sigh of relief for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. There is quite a significant amount of trade with classics going back and forth. Either way over the Atlantic, they like to buy our classics. We like to buy theirs. Things like the various MGs and Austin Healys and Jaguars that Americans lapped up in period. That's a long-standing part of the classic car trade, and there was fears that we were the Americans were going to slap on a tariff of potentially 25% on the cars that we were selling to them, the classic cars. But luckily, those that have been made prior to 2000 are remaining at the current 2.5%, which is good news for businesses in the UK. But the big snag with all of this is that potentially parts might not be included in that. That's due to be announced next month. So again, there are a lot of businesses based in the UK who do sell to customers based in the States, and potentially that still might have a bit of impact to the classic car industry here. I know, James, you've been speaking to quite a few specialists on this. What have you been finding out from people on the ground?
The view that from people I spoke to is that they are quite relieved that these tariffs haven't been slapped onto classics, but they are, as you say, still worried about the potential for parts. And also, one of the conversations that I had with a shipper was saying that due to the tariffs, there's going to be less boats going back and forth to the US as well, which again, that may have a knock-on effect to shipping it as well. Less space on less boats going across the across the pond.
Yeah, because certainly we already know that in the new car sphere that Jaguar Land Rover pours shipments over to the US market at the moment while they're trying to figure out what's going on with tariffs. And companies like JLR, they are the big spenders when it comes to shipping, taking cars over to the States. And classic car specialists, they tend to sort of take up the empty slots on those ships. So if there's fewer sailings, it means less availability, and that could potentially put prices up anyway.
Do you know if it's working reciprocally, if it's going to become something that impacts classics coming from America as well, if we're going to see sort of a UK change in trade, or if we're not sort of going down the China route of just simply sort of slapping tariffs back as sort of a means of reciprocation, if it's going to be harder to import American classics to the UK now?
Depends entirely on Downing Street's response to the tariffs, and I know that there's a lot of discussion going on in Downing Street and across Whitehall at the moment as to how best to respond to that. I said in my piece this week that classic cars they represent an industry worth £7.2 billion to the UK economy, and it would be a real shame if some clumsily applied tariffs, inadvertently catch classics in that. And that would potentially have a bit of an impact on cars that are coming over here.
Because obviously there is sort of a bit of a market in the UK for classic American cars. 60s, 70s sort of American muscle is a popular little sector, and obviously we don't get many of them as sort of natural sales here. Everything has to have been imported, so it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. But like you said, it's an ongoing story as this all changes, and it's surprisingly fluid. And it's again strange to see our sort of little side of the hobby caught up in this sort of giant sort of global trade warfare almost.
Yeah, and certainly a big part of that is it's not just sort of UK buyers that necessarily going for American classic cars necessarily, even though I know there is a healthy market for those. It's people buying cars that I mentioned things like Triumph TRs and MGs. Well, there's been a long-standing supply of cars coming in along those lines. I know, James, you've spoken to specialists who bring over Volkswagens and Porsches as well, and these are cars, and they've long traditionally been in demand in these countries because they are generally cars from the dry states where rust isn't so much of an issue. So that while you are buying a US spec example, which is going to have left-on drive and might have US lights and bumpers and so on, they're worth doing because bodily, you don't have to go through as much rigmarole to get them back up to scratch again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking to a few people, they're all saying the same opinion, that it's not the high end stuff that will be impacted, but more the everyday classics that would feel the pinch more than anybody else.
Yeah, I think if you're buying at that sort of proper top end, sort of record setting levels of sort of sales we see at Bonham and the Quail and sort of all the top end American sort of stuff on like lawns, if you're buying the cars there, you're going to pay whatever the market demands to get your car. But when it comes to the trading hands of more sort of everyday attainable classics, it is going to be something that has an interesting knock-on effect, and it's going to be interesting to see what that does for long-term prices as well, whether we see prices dropping to try and accumulate or sort of accommodate the tariffs, or if they go up in a response to it because there is this change in demand.
Equally, it could have a more of an impact on what happens with our relations with our biggest trading partner, which is the EU, of course. And obviously things have not been, for reasons that I'm sure everyone is aware, they've not been as straightforward as they have been previously. But again, there are other cars. I know, James, I think one of your cars is a European import, isn't it? One of your Beetles was at one point. And certainly it might be that Britain moves towards an easier trading relationship with Europe, and that might have a benefit in terms of bringing cars in from places like Italy or south of France or Spain. Those cars might be easier to get hold of instead.
I mean, when I got my current Beetle, I did a deal with a chap, and he took my car back to the Netherlands, and mine came from the Netherlands, and that all happened just as Brexit was about to happen. So there was like a real flurry of activity to make this happen before the legislation changed. So there's a lot of uncertainty around the B word even then.
And all of this, I mean, the one thing that the market values, and businesses too, the one thing they love is the C word, which is certainty. I don't know why you guys are thinking of anything else, but certainty is a good thing for the classic car industry, and Trump has effectively brought uncertainty to this industry, and uncertainty in our market, as we've seen in the past, generally means that people are being less confident, and you see that reflected in some of the prices that are being paid.
It'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on as it knocks on. But I mean, even since we went to press, there's been a few changes in the sort of more broader tariffs. So it could be something that in about a month's time we see a different story too once again as it develops. But one to keep an eye on for certain. There is some positive news that's coming out of the classic car world this week, which is of course the sort of update or refreshing to Coventry holding a classic event this year, and they've got something in place of Motorfest.
Do you know what? I've got to make a confession here, which is the Coventry Motor Fest. In the 10 years it's been held, I've never been. But no, but I know sort of, obviously we've had members of the team who have been to the Coventry Motor Fest over the year. It's a very well established format. I think it's brilliant what they do using the ring road. Using this ring road classic car demonstrations, and it's picked up a really big audience over the year. And so some big manufacturers, including Jaguar, who really do a lot to support it. So the fact that they haven't been able to have that event this year because of, I believe, it's roadworks is a real shame. But it's great to see that the team are. They're not just saying, "Oh, we can't have one this year. That's the end of that." They're having a really interesting looking event, very much bringing the clubs involved, and which will still bring classics into Coventry city centre. So I think that's a really positive thing for the event side of things.
Yeah, it's going to be May 31st through June 1st. So over, I think, is that a bank holiday weekend? No, it's not. That's one of the regular weekends. I've lost track of where all the bank holidays fall through May. But it is going to be one of those sort of popular summer starter weekends, and it's all taking place in the cathedral ruins. So again, something that had been utilised through Motorfest as well. I think they held the Concours in there most years. But looks like they're sort of compiling Club Motorfest into that area and celebrating 50 years of the Jaguar XJS as well. So there's going to be some interesting showcases there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be quite an interesting weekend. I think that opening weekend of June, because not only have they got Club Motorfest, as it's called, they've also got over in Bicester, they've got the first Wheeler Dealer Live event. So I know that Mike Brewer is holding an event which is very much focused around buying and selling cars, and there's going to be a classic car auction sale there. So again, that's quite an exciting new development as well. And much further down south, we've also got the London to Brighton Classic Car Run in association with Classic Car Weekly, which again, that's going to be looking like it's going to be a really good run this year. So we're looking forward to sort of seeing how that builds up. So it doesn't matter if there's events up in the north as well. Tatton Park will be back around that time of year as well. So it's looking like there's going to be sort of some quite interesting things going on with shows this summer.
Yeah, that weekend, I think putting together Out and About, I've been sort of looking forward to it and sort of going, there is a lot going on that weekend. Much the same as sort of Drive It Day, the sort of slot where I sort of write out everything happening on the 27th just sort of grows and grows and grows week on week. That last weekend in May always seems to be an absolutely enormous one. I know that Brands Hatch have got their Masters Historic weekend that weekend, so there's plenty of racing going on as well. It is just going to be one of those weekends where everything's going on. It's a sort of proper treat for classic car fans looking to get out and experience something.
Yeah, and the only problem with all that is that we can only choose to go to one, each of us.
Yes.
So that's a shame. Unless you can unless you've got a teleporter, you can only go to one.
Yeah, even the fastest of MG midgets won't be able to get around all those events in one hit. But we'll move on from the news around shows to the lead feature. This is going to be a bit of a talky one from me because we obviously have mentioned, I don't think I've mentioned yet, obviously I'm off to the Goodwood members meeting this weekend. And if you're not heading along, you can obviously watch all the action on their live stream. But they've got the inaugural Win Percy trophy this year. Previous years, the members meeting has always had a big showcase of touring saloons. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, which is a bit of a shame, which has always got sort of Mustangs, Camaros racing against one another in a great showcase of racing action. But it often leaves the smaller touring cars a little bit sort of left behind in the pack. So this year they've sort of brought together a new race celebrating sort of the racing achievements of Win Percy and smaller touring cars. So this is for everything under 2.8 litres, I think, off the top of my head. So we've got some fantastic cars coming together for that. And I've gotten behind the wheel of a car that Mr. Lamore himself will be contesting at the event, a brilliant brand new build 1275 GT Mini, and goes like the clappers, I will say.
I believe there's I think there are 4 minis taking part in that race that are all being driven by quite high profile racing drivers. So which is going to be a really good thing in terms of whether you're at Goodwood this weekend, or don't forget you can go online, you can watch it all for nothing. If you can't get to Goodwood, yeah. And again, the great thing with minis at Goodwood is it's always really gripping close action.
Yes, I think I'm right in saying, I've just pulled up the entry list so I can check this, that Gordon Spice is the over 2.8 litre category, but in the under 2.8s, I think it's all the house captains for the members meeting are in 1275 GT minis, and Tom Kristensen is one of them. Dario Franchitti is another again 1275 GT mini, and then Andy Priaulx, another one, and I think Gordon Shedden in the fourth. Yeah, there we go. So everyone is a house captain, a team captain for this year's event is in 1275 GTs. So it's going to be a feisty little battle between the four of them as they contest for points and the overall prize at the end of the weekend.
Yeah, and they're not going to be driving gently to protect the paintwork, are they?
No, despite the absolute fantastic paintwork on this completely rebuilt from scratch mini, they are not going to be hanging about. It's going to be rubbing as racing, as always seems to be the encouraged way at Goodwood. Not necessarily crash 'em, smash 'em, but a little bit of close action is allowed from time to time.
And you've been following this mini sort of, from pretty much its inception, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'd sort of been reached out to by a few people that are sort of around the build, sort of going, this is what we're doing. We're looking to sort of recreate a car that had originally raced in period. And it's brought together some fantastic names from the world of sort of classic mini restoration and classic mini racing sort of cars. So we've had Bill Solis, who puts together a lot of fantastic classic racing cars, and Daph Owens produced some great historic body shells that are all certified. So it's been a great celebration of what sort of restorations can do for sort of bringing back cars and celebrating historic racing cars. I know that Jim Summers is going to be at the event himself. I don't think he's driving, but this is a car that sort of celebrates the car that he raced in period. So he's going to be there to see the car and sort of get to sort of see something that sort of borrows his heritage and back out on track, which is going to be quite a nice little sort of pointer.
And the thing with the Goodwood members meeting, of course, is that by the very nature of the name, it's not you can't just rock up off the A27 and say, "Hey, 2 tickets, please," can you? It's it's a little bit different to
as the name
events,
suggests.
really.
Yeah, a meeting for members. So obviously members of the Goodwood Road Racing Club, the sort of the initial invitees, and even then you've still got to pay for your ticket to get in. But it does create a very fun, very enjoyable atmosphere. And again, it's one of those things that sort of has a proper feel of spring to it. Goodwood spends a lot of time sort of decorating and laying out the circuit with the iconic daffodils that line all the grass banking, and the net result is an event that does feel quite special and feels like a proper celebration of classic cars as well. We've got some interesting sort of stretches of the definition of classic car. We've got celebrations of GT3 race cars this year as well that are coming along. So we've got sort of cars that are at the sort of upper end of acceptable for classic cars, so cars that are sort of 10 to 15 years old that are just aging into that. But it's going to be a great way to sort of see public acceptance of things like sort of Ford GTs from the early noughties, a couple of BMW Z4s, things like that that sort of raced around the turn of the millennium through to the sort of the late 2000s, early 2010s, and just sort of see what the public thinks of that. But again, this is the first time we've had a fully sustainably fueled members meeting as well, so it's there's no holds barred when it comes to really pushing forward to make this in a great public event as well.
Yeah, so I know that the revival last September, that was their first. I think that was the first entirely sustainably fueled historic race meet in the world. This is obviously following their footsteps, and so they're almost sort of making history really with that and kind of paving the way for synthetic fuels for the rest of us.
Yeah, it always proves to be an interesting test bed. I know that at the revival I spoke to I can't remember his name unfortunately, but one of the sort of head at Aramco, so Anglo-American oils, and the development work that they put into developing their fuels, and the fact they sort of put together several different strains that work for different engine styles, whether they're leaded, unleaded, to try and get the burn properly, try and get sort of the actual balancing point of the petrols right for the span of engines they have to create them for. And I think one of the interesting hurdles they will have faced for members meeting is the fact that we have the what's the one for the Edwardians that I always absolutely love, all the absolute sort of big banger sort of 1912 Fiat,
Beast of Turin, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Beast of Turin, everything that falls under that category. I can't remember what that race is called. Let me just scroll back up through my entry list and I'll sure enough stumble across the name for it. The SF Edge Trophy. So we've got everything that's from sort of the turn of the last century kicking about, that's now going to be sustainably fueled. So giant sort of no exhaust systems, Sunbeams and Gordon Bennett's and Fiats that are just sort of belching flames, but also technically no additional atmospheric pollutants, which is going to be very interesting and sort of quite enjoyable in a morally upstanding way.
James, what's your favourite of the three Goodwood events? They've got the members meeting this weekend, they've got the Festival of Speed, and they've got the Revival in September. I'm just wondering which one sort of floats your boat the most as a classic car fan.
Well, hands down, the Revival. No,
Yeah.
not even a question in that one. Yeah, it just ticks all of my boxes. Just I'm not really massively into motorsport, but there's something about seeing the racing that goes on at Revival that actually I am really interested in. I like dressing up. I like a cravat, and I like the aircraft as well. So I mean, for me, the Revival's just a walk back in time, isn't it?
Yeah, I love the Revival. Well, it sounds like, Jesse, you're very much a fan of the members meeting, but I mean, if you had to go to one or the other, or in fact, of the three, which would you go to?
It's like ask me to pick which limb I'd rather lose. I don't know. They all have such a unique and endearing and enjoyable atmosphere, and this sounds like I don't want to try and get kicked out by Goodwood for saying the wrong thing. Members meeting feels special because it is that slightly closed, slightly sort of smaller audience. It does feel a bit more sort of homely and friendly. Festival of Speed is fantastic if you're just a fan of the motor car. It's not hugely classic biased these years. But I think I'm going to have to side with James and say it is Revival. It is just that thing that it somehow pulls off the trick of being everything for everyone. It has those additional little bits that just keep you coming back every year. And even if you spend, as we're fortunate to, 3 days at the event, you've still never seen everything. It's one of those things that truly baffles the mind how they managed to get so much into a 3-day event. And I think the dedication to putting it off with such sort of levels of genuine brilliance, it always succeeds. David, is it a third vote for Goodwood Revival, or?
I've got to admit, actually, it's without making it a clean sweep. Yeah, I mean, having been to all three, I love the members meeting, but for me, it's the Revival. It's just, it has, not only does it have some of the best historic racing anywhere in the world, it's got that wonderful sense of theatre when you're off track. And for me, the thing I really love about the Revival more than anything else are the classic car displays that people bring, because they come from all across Europe. You see cars with American registration plates there, and from Asia as well. And you could spend a day just looking around the classic cars that people bring to the show, right, as well as the show itself, because that in itself is probably bigger than most of the country's classic car shows in its own right. It's phenomenal.
Also, I was having a flick through their socials, and they sort of obviously promoted like a couple of pictures of the giant classic car parks they have. They have both the pre-66 one and then the tax-exempt one. And there are a lot of people, seemingly sort of locals of the area, that just come along to have a look around the classic car parks, because for them it's just a giant free classic car show to attend and enjoy. So it is one of those things that does have this brilliant broad appeal to it. And yeah, the displays on track, the showcases, the parade laps that sort of bring this motoring history together. We've seen Austin 7 celebrated, the Jaguar XK engine, beach buggies. Every year they find a new little corner of classic motoring and go, isn't this fantastic? And this is great to celebrate it. And it's always done with a genuine level of passion as well. It's not done because it's the anniversary, we should do it. You have the sense of they really care about what they're putting together, which makes it just that more sort of enjoyable from sort of a proper car fanatic side.
Absolutely, and worth mentioning again that we will be having obviously full write-up in next week's Classic Car Weekly. But if you can't get to Goodwood this weekend, or like me, you're in the north of England and it's a long drive, then you can go online to Goodwood's website, or you can have a look at YouTube, and they've got all the races. Well worth having a look, because there's some really exciting racing going on as well.
Yeah, all across their YouTube channels for Road Racing Club, for Revival, all across their social media pages as well, where possible, they'll be live streaming it. So if you really want to sort of get along, or at least enjoy the action, there'll be a chance to tune in somewhere and watch a few of the exciting races. Even things like the showcase laps, the parade laps, are all still going to be broadcast. They've got excellent commentary, so you sort of pick up all the fun little historic facts and figures as it goes on. One of the interesting things about the members meeting, though, is it does of course have a Bonhams auction, and we have previewed the auction in the current issue. So I've asked you guys to sort of have a quick leaf through and sort of pick out the cars that you would most like to take home. Are there any that really jump out to you, Mr. Peen?
Well, people at home won't be able to see this, but there's a car that really speaks to me because I have the Transformers version of it on my desk. So, Autobot Jazz, who was a Martini liveried 911.
I think that must be a first, James, you having props for the CCW podcast. So props to you for the props.
Props that no one can see at home. But yeah, I mean, for me, 911s all day long, and the ultimate 80s 911 is a turbo and a martini liveried one. And the one that Bonhams are selling is, I believe, the Porsche promo car, right-hand drive, got a really crazy interior, and I'd have to sell my house to buy it. So sadly, it won't be coming home with me, but it is, for me, the standout car of the sale.
I was going to say,
1978, yeah.
I found another Porsche in the same sale, which you won't have to sell your house for, James, which it piqued my interest, which is a 1978 911 SC 3 litre, and it's going to need a bit of work, but I'm sure James, and man of your talents, you'll be able to get this up and running again. And the thing that strikes me is that the estimate for it is 20 to 30k, and it's a no reserve car, so potentially, if you go along and you catch the wind blowing in the right direction, you might be able to get that for under 20k. And you're considering some of the estimates for some of the other 911s in the sale, including the one you've mentioned. That to me sounds like potentially a bit of a bargain. It looks like quite a solid example. It's been off the road for 3 years, but it looks fundamentally all right. And I'd be half tempted to buy the Wodge. I'd stick in a bid for it.
I think if I could afford it, it could come happily sit on my driveway for another 3 years whilst I saved up to do it. But no, I saw that one as well. That was one of the ones I flicked past as well. But yeah, that's a very nice car.
Absolutely, there's a couple of quite interesting cars as well. I mean, the one that I'd be interested, keeping an eye on from a market point of view is there is a Renault 5 GT Turbo in 1990, which it's an older restoration. It's under again, it needs a little bit of magic to get it back on the road, but it's again, one owner car, under 70,000 miles on the clock, and they are estimating this as being 10 to 20 K, again being sold no reserve, and considering that at the restoration show, a Renault 5 GT Turbo, as I'm sure you two remember, sold for just over 25 grand. This actually looks like, again, potentially quite a good deal for a 5 Turbo, because they've been going up in leaps and bounds, particularly since the pandemic. So that potentially might be quite an interesting deal. There was another car as well that at the opposite end of the scale, which I love this, which is it's a 1952 Jaguar XK 120. It's you may have seen it because it's the car that appears on the front of the catalogue. It's ex Peter Ag. It's been given loads of upgrades, but it just looks absolutely stonking in this lovely shade of yellow. It's been painted. It's the best looking XK with the best looking body, and it's just gorgeous. I would have it tomorrow if I had the funds.
It does look absolutely fantastic, that yellow XK. I will say that I've got a couple that jumped out to me. There's 1961 Ford Thunderbird Indy 500 Festival car. So this was used.
I like that.
Yeah, this was used at the period Indy 500s for sort of showcase touring sort of people around the circuit. It was never used as the official pace car. They had white interiors. This is a black interior, and was therefore just used for sort of shuttling important people about the gaff. But it then also came to a previous revival where it was driven by Lord March and had Buzz Aldrin riding shotgun. So that's a lot of history for 45 to 75,000 pounds, and that's a fairly good price for a T-Bird with any provenance, let alone Buzz Aldrin as a passenger. So that really ticked my bucket list. Again, cars of provenance. There's Eric Clapton's 1975 Ferrari 365 and a brilliant Ford Capri. This is a 1973 Avon Tour of Great Britain Rally 3-litre GXL Group 1 car that had been driven by His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Kent, Niki Lauda, Tom Walkinshaw, and Barry Sheen. The latter three are three of my absolute icons. So
racing royalty, pretty much.
Yeah. It's such a brilliant car with this strange and fantastic history of drivers. And included in the catalogue, if you have a look online, there is a great shot of Prince Michael of Kent suffering a little bit of power oversteer on a gravel stage, and it just looks sublime. 80 to 120,000 pounds, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes for a little bit more. More attainably, there is a Frog Eye Sprite and an A35 that are both tasty options. A-series engines. The A35, I think, is still road legal as well, despite being race prepped for HRDC meets and Goodwood's St Mary's Trophy. So some slightly more reasonable buys at sort of the lower end of the market.
Did you see? I'm going to say the 1975 Alfa Romeo Montreal Coupe that's on there.
Yes. It looks
So
a little bit frilly along the edges, but if that, I'm thinking of the right one.
that's the one. It's very frilly, but it's orange and it's gorgeous and no reserve.
Ooh. If you knew someone who could do a good bit of body work, that would be quite a fun project and certainly something you could walk away from at the end of being quite proud of restoring and reviving that. Yeah, 15 to 20,000 pounds is not a lot for a Montreal, and oh,
That's
rare
attached in
die.
87 as well. It's been off the road for a while, but I do like a barn find.
Yeah, that is a tasty option. Mechanical fuel injection, though, you're going to need a fairly good mechanic to try and get that working again. Developed by Alfa Romeo in period. That's going to be a bit of a fizzy and fiddly little one to get going.
Have you
Yeah,
seen
there's
the Mercedes 600 that's originally purchased new by Jack Nicholson? And I cannot think of a car that would be more perfect for him.
yes, yeah, that's literally the page before as well.
Yeah,
70 to 90,000 pounds does not seem like a lot of money for one of those as well.
no, well, it looks like it's in really good condition. I can actually picture the Joker driving, being driven around in that and just going to subtly lowering the rear window in Gotham.
Yeah, well, everything on that was hydraulics as well, wasn't it? Hydraulics on pneumatics, so even the window doesn't have that electric whir to it. It just sort of silently hisses down. It's very
Yeah.
sort of villainous. But yeah, it's a really interestingly sort of spread catalog actually with some genuinely affordable options. I keep going back to that Frog Eye Sprite as well because it is very tasty. 17 to 22,000 pounds is at the higher end, but was restored in 2023, so it is sort of box fresh and ready to go in that respect. So, ooh, yeah. Yeah, I think there's plenty of exciting choices there, but that's plenty of talk for this week's issue. We've still got plenty of work to crack on with ahead of next week, where we've got 70 years of the Sunbeam Rapier being celebrated, as well as a buying guide for the Alfa Romeo 147, which I should basically just read don't. I've had several friends have some of those and suffer badly. And we've also got the build up to the Donington Historic Festival. In the meantime, though, gentlemen, what have you got coming up this weekend? Obviously, you've mentioned where I'm off to.
I think I'm going to be, I'd say, messing around with the MX-5, trying to get the aforementioned central locking working again, and it needs various other things. It needs new wipers. It needs some mold that it's built up over the winter, de-cleaning. So I think I'm going to be getting gloves on, and I'll be keeping out of mischief this weekend.
And myself, if it rains, I will dodge the bodywork on the van and do some bits on the inside. I've got to sort out the blower heater that's not working, but I've got the bit to do it. But it's a case of taking virtually half the bottom side of the dashboard apart and being upside down. So yeah, I've been putting that one off, but I'll probably do that if weather stops play outside.
Yeah, having recently done that to the Jimny, I don't envy you that task. The Jimny, a car that only earlier today failed its MOT again for its brakes now being too efficient and binding a little bit, whereas previously they weren't efficient enough across the rear axle. So all fun from my garage. But anyway, we've got plenty to look forward to and another great issue of Classic Car Weekly on shop shelves, and we ought to get working on another great issue for you to pick up next week. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.
Been a pleasure as always.
Always a pleasure, never a chore.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. And we'll be back soon with another edition and issue of Classic Car Weekly.